Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw. Yes, I am still sick, but screw it! I need to get back to what I'm supposed to be doing on YouTube, and that is making reviews and all that good stuff. Anyways, today I'm talking about the next solo album from Marty Friedman entitled Inferno. I remember a while back reading about this information about this album and about all of the guest spots. There's a lot of guests on this album. And that's, I guess you could say it's kind of common, but to see that there's so many guests without this album that basically there's barely any songs with just Marty Friedman and the rest of the guys that he picked for the solo album, that it's more of like a Marty Friedman and Friends album rather than a Marty Friedman solo album in a sense. But anyways, the thing that I liked about this album is that I didn't really hear too much about this album, like, you know, hearing like singles and stuff like that going into it. I heard bits and pieces of one single, and I can't remember what the song was exactly because it was a little while ago. And so I was kind of like going into it blind and just wanted to experience whatever Inferno was. I'm going to be doing something within this review. Hold on a second. I need to be drinking, keep my throat from not, dying from this sickness. But the fact is, like I said, I enjoy the fact that I went into this album without knowing really anything, and coming out of this album, a few listens on repeat, and then really thinking about it, I think the best way to experience this album for the first time, if you've not heard it, which, I hope that there's some people out there that haven't heard this album so they can experience like I have without really hearing too much, is that it's definitely a very eye-opening experience. You may start thinking about the album's going to go this way and it's going to stick to this formula throughout the whole entire release, hearing the first couple tracks or really getting an idea of this album, listening for the first time. And then it starts taking these twists and turns that you're not really expecting, and I like that. I like the fact that it does that because it makes this album stand out from other releases that I've really listened to this year. And I'm not saying the other releases I'm speaking of are generic and, I wasn't surprised. It's more of like, I had this idea of a formula and they did some twists and turns, but this Inferno album really does a lot of twists and turns that I was not expecting. And it really blew my mind. And I think the way that Marty Friedman really approached this album, at least with the guest spots that appear throughout this whole entire album, basically, is that it wasn't like Marty Friedman came up with a song and then the guest came in and then that's it, right? And they just do the little thing and it's done. Marty Friedman and the guest really collaborated on another level to where they came up with some ideas, he came up with some ideas that came together and kind of put it together, so it's more of a collaboration rather than just Marty Friedman and then, okay, there's a guest spot here for this person or whatever. And so I like that. Most of this album is an instrumental. There are some songs that does have some vocals, and I think that does some switching up, but for the most part, this album is an instrumental album, so it's more for the fans of people that enjoy the musical side of metal and the musical side of hard rock and stuff like that, in a sense. So the vocal spots really do switch it up, but I think that this is for the people that enjoy the musical side more than the vocal side, because there's not that much vocals. I'm going to go through some of my favorite tracks now. Please check the description, as I'm not going to try to pronounce some of these song names. I'm going to say what number they are, so make sure you check the description along with the names as well, because, on top of the fact that I'm bad with names and all that good stuff, I'm sick, so, it makes it worse for me. This is definitely different for me. Anyway, so make sure you check that description as I'm going along here. Track number 1, which is the actual title track itself, Inferno. A great way to open this album. Beautiful. Resin, I think it's how I pronounce it. R-E-S-I-N. That track was definitely a little bit of a turn from Inferno, but it definitely was a good track nonetheless to kind of, from Inferno to this one. It was a good transition and all that. Now, track number 3, I'm not going to try to pronounce the song name and all that, or the people involved, but that song definitely has a acoustic vibe, as the people, as you can see in the description, the guest, are a acoustic duo that have done a lot of great things acoustic guitar-wise. So definitely check that out. Steroidhead, that's a great track as well, track number 4. Track number 5 is I Can't Relax, which features Danko Jones. And that is one of the few songs that does have vocals on this on this album. And that song's a little bit different. It's definitely not really to the heavy side. It's more of the pulled back kind of hard rockish in a sense. Definitely not what I'm used to listening to now compared to all the stuff that I listen to. So it's a little bit different. To some people, you may not like that song, and that's understandable. But for me, it was kind of a different change, and it definitely was one of those side and, you know, those twists and turns it does. Track number 6, Meat Hook, is good. 7, Hyper Doom. Track number 8, Sociopaths, featured Davidson, who is, of course, from Revocation. I love that band, and he does vocals, and I believe he does a solo. I was definitely listening to see if there was a solo that kind of stands out from Marty Friedman, but it was definitely a good song nonetheless. Track number 9, which is features Danko Jones, and of course, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I'm not really good with names, from Children of Bodom. He does some vocals as well. I can definitely tell he was doing some vocals, and I believe he does a guitar solo as well. Could be wrong, so there's that. Track number 11, and then is Horrors, which is co-written by Jason Becker. But track number 12 is Inferno Reprise. And I want to talk about Horrors real quick. But Inferno Reprise, the ending track, it goes back to the title track from the first one and kind of reprises it for the end. But the Horrors, what I really like about that song is that it has a mighty kind of climactic ending. The song has like this epic moments and it has these very epic guitar solos, which are seen throughout the whole entire album, but Horrors feel like it's on another different level. And for me, when I was listening to it, I was thinking about Inferno Reprise and then listening to Horrors, the track, you know, the track number 11, right before the ending with the Inferno Reprise, track number 12. But Horrors could have ended this album. It could have, but it didn't, and I was kind of curious of why that is, but I guess the way Marty Friedman saw it, he wanted Inferno to kind of end it with a reprise thing. But I feel like Horrors, in a way, could have ended this album, because it really does have a mighty thing going for it. It has a lot of great song structure, a lot of great song sections, what I was trying to say, blah, and overall, just a very epic sounding track, so I'm not really sure, but I do want to say that, real quick before I go off into the actual band, I do not have the information of who else played with, like, the studio, like with maybe another rhythm guitarist, a bass player, and a drummer, because for some reason the info that I'm looking through, I cannot find it, but I will talk about them anyways, but there's no names, and if I do find the names, or if you know the names, please let me know in the comment section below somewhere. But of course, Marty Friedman does a beautiful job on this album. His solos are fantastic, and the riffs are mighty. And the rhythm guitar player, I'm assuming there's another rhythm player as well, because it sounds like there's definitely more than one person playing on the guitar section when there's riffs being played. That it just sounds amazing. The guitar playing is just mind-blowing in sections, and overall, Marty Friedman's solos are just to die for. He is so good at what he does, and this is not taking a jab. I'm just saying, on my own personal, honest opinion, listening to Marty Friedman play on this album and listening to the last Megadeth record, it's kind of bad, because Marty Friedman is, like, destroying. But, you know, that's just my own personal opinion. Marty Friedman is doing an amazing job. That was the point I was trying to make. But Marty Friedman, like I said, is doing a beautiful job. If there was another guitar player, which I'm assuming there was, you know, the guitar overall sounds great to begin with. The riffs are mighty, and they can be melodic and all that. The bass playing was definitely something that I heard through the mix, which I really enjoyed. Because sometimes the bass doesn't always come through, like on these types of albums where it's an instrumental type album, at least for this one, it's the most part, that the bass playing is not really noticed. It's not really put up in the mix, because the main forefront is usually the guitar playing, which there's a lot of solo albums of the guitar players really taking on a solo project. But the bass is heard through the mixes. I really enjoyed that. And some of the riffs on this album, the bass following, that's a really hectic thing you gotta deal with some of these riffs. These are pretty intense stuff, so gotta give props to the bass. Drumming is intense as well, and because there's some songs and there's some sections on this album that are just very hectic and very in your face, and the drumming has to do the same, or else you're going to just listen to the guitars and everything else and just go, why is the drums not really, getting into this, or really just going, for it? The fact that the drumming does do that is what really pushes this album, I think, in my personal opinion. So overall, this album sounds great in my personal opinion. The guests are great, and this album is great. My final thoughts, to kind of close this album out before I die over from the sickness, is that it was a great surprise, and I want you guys, if you've not heard anything, if you heard whatever, just go into this album and just kind of sit back and just listen. Because there's going to be some twists and turns that's going to throw you off, and it's going to make you really think more about what exactly is going to happen next, because I wasn't expecting this. And I think it's a good thing, because in my own personal opinion, there's some musical things that get to the point where it's the same thing, or it's like it's not trying as hard as it should. The musicians are not trying as hard to really throw the listener off, and I feel like this album does that. It does it in some great spots, and this album is varied in a sense, so expect some changes and expect some things that you're not really expecting, and I think you'll have an enjoyable experience. I give this album an 8.5 out of 10. It may be higher more and more I listen to it, but for right now, it's a great experience, and it was a great way to kind of relax and kind of deal with this sickness. So, Inferno, Marty Friedman, go check it out if you haven't. So, I'm Chainsaw. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, like the video. If you want to see me and see all my stuff, click my name or subscribe to see more, because hopefully the sickness will be gone by then. And I'll see you guys soon with another video. See ya.